God does not anoint who people approve. He anoints who he appoints. Bishop T.D. Jakes. Chosen one, lean in. Because this moment, it's not random, it's divine alignment. You didn't just happen to find this message. Your spirit pulled it into your path. That stirring in your chest, that whisper in your soul, that sense that something big is coming. That's confirmation. You're not crazy, you're being called. Your journey has never been easy. You've loved like Christ, giving when it hurt, forgiving when it broke you, staying silent when you could have screamed. You've fought like David, small in the eyes of the world, but mighty in the eyes of God. And now you're about to rise, not just physically, not just financially, but spiritually, powerfully, royally. This rise is different because it's not about proving anything to others. It's about stepping into what heaven already said was yours. But let me ask you something. Why has your path been so unusual? Why do your relationships feel deeper, your battles feel heavier, your silence feel sacred? Have you noticed how people react to you even when you say nothing? It's because the anointing on your life speaks before you do. There's a spiritual weight to your presence. Not everyone can name it, but they feel it, and so does the enemy. And that's why the attacks came so fiercely. That's why the heartbreaks hit so hard. That's why the delays felt like death, because darkness recognized your light before you did. But what the enemy didn't understand is that your love was your power, your fight was your training, and your pain was your preparation. You are not just surviving, you are becoming royalty. Take a moment now and comment 777 if you feel this. That number isn't just a symbol, it's your spiritual signature. It tells heaven, I'm awake, I'm aligned, I'm ready to walk in purpose. And to everyone who's supported this journey through Super Thanks, thank you from the depths of my heart. You are helping carry this message into the lives of the weary, the searching, the called. Whether you gave or not, your presence here is proof that your spirit recognizes truth. What we're about to unfold is not a motivational speech. It's a mirror. It's a revelation of who you really are and why your life has never fit into the world's mold. You were never called to blend in. You were called to lead, to heal, to restore, to rule. Not with ego, but with grace. Not for power, but for purpose. There's something hidden in your story that even you haven't fully seen yet, but it's about to be revealed. Stay close. Keep your spirit open, because once you see what's coming next, there's no going back. Let's begin. God's chosen ones, you loved like Christ, fought like David, and will rise like a king. You've always known there was something different about you. Not better, different. Being chosen has never been about climbing ladders, chasing applause, or fitting into the molds others seem so eager to fill. It's something far deeper, something sacred. God didn't choose you because of your perfection or popularity. He chose you because of your heart, because you were willing to carry a weight most people would run from. From a young age, you likely felt out of place. While others were drawn to noise, you often felt most alive in silence. Have you ever wondered why crowds drained you, but solitude brought clarity? That inner pull towards something more meaningful, that was God's voice from the start. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, and before you were born I set you apart." You weren't overlooked, you were set apart. People may have misunderstood you. They might have labeled you as too quiet, too sensitive, or even too intense. But in truth, you were carrying something holy, something rare. While others were focused on appearances, you were discerning spirits. You could feel the lies behind polite smiles, sense truth in the silence, and recognize heaviness behind laughter. This wasn't weakness, it was spiritual sensitivity. You were tuned to a frequency that many couldn't hear. Why do the chosen ones always seem to carry so much pain? Could it be that pain is the very classroom where purpose is revealed? Think of David, a shepherd boy forgotten in the fields. Even his father didn't consider him worthy of kingship. Yet, when the prophet Samuel arrived, God said in 1 Samuel 16:7, "The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." While David was tending sheep, heaven was preparing a crown. That same pattern has been true for you. Hidden from recognition, yet never hidden from God. You've probably felt the weight of isolation, seasons when you were separated, not because you were unworthy, but because you were being sanctified. Have you noticed how before elevation, there's always a pulling away? Before Jesus began his ministry, he was led into the wilderness to fast, pray, and confront the enemy. Before glory, there is always a wilderness. How many times have you felt like you were wandering through that dry land, not realizing that God was strengthening your roots? While others celebrated publicly, your greatest victories happened in secret. No one saw you forgive what was never acknowledged. No one clapped when you chose righteousness over revenge. But heaven recorded every moment. Galatians 6:9 reminds you, "Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." The seeds you've sown in tears will one day bloom in joy. And while the world kept moving, you were evolving. People like Maya Angelou, a renowned poet and civil rights activist, often spoke of the transformative power of purpose. She once said, "There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you." Could it be that your story, the very one you've kept hidden, is the testimony the world needs most? This is why you've loved with the compassion of Christ, fought with the courage of David, and endured with the patience of Joseph. And just as Joseph went from the pit to the palace, your trials were never the end of the story. They were the preparation for a rise no one saw coming. You don't need validation to confirm what God has already spoken. What he ordains cannot be undone. The crown isn't given by man, and it can't be taken by man. You're not rising because of applause. You're rising because of alignment. And as you step into what's next, remember this: God chose you not because the journey would be easy, but because your heart could carry it. The same God who called David in secret is the one calling you now, not to blend in, but to reign. This is what truly sets you apart. While others were celebrated on stages, praised in public, or promoted without pressure, you were being forged in silence. God didn't train you under spotlights, he trained you in shadows. While some were handed crowns, you were handed crushing, yet through that crushing came clarity. What exactly did you learn in that stillness when it felt like the world moved on without you? You learned how to pray, not just from habit, but from the depths of agony. You learned how to walk when your legs were trembling and how to stand when no one was cheering you on. You discovered how to recognize the whisper of God when everything around you went quiet. That kind of formation doesn't happen in crowds. It happens in the wilderness. Just like Moses, who spent 40 years in the desert before ever confronting Pharaoh, you were not wasting time. You were being trained for leadership behind the scenes. This is the true mark of the chosen. Divine formation, not just divine favor. The favor may attract attention, but it's the formation that makes you trustworthy. Being chosen doesn't make your journey easier. It often makes it heavier. Why? Because you were never just fighting for yourself. You were called to break curses your ancestors couldn't, to uproot dysfunction that ran deep, to become the turning point in your bloodline. Can you see now why your trials had to be so deep? Why your path has always felt more narrow, more lonely? It's because you were never meant to blend in. You were crafted to build what has never been seen before. You weren't born to echo others. You were born to be a voice. Not everyone can understand that, and not everyone was meant to walk with you. Before God could trust you with visibility, he had to test you in invisibility. Before Joseph wore a robe of royalty, he was stripped, thrown in a pit, sold as a slave, and wrongly imprisoned. Genesis 50:20 captures the full circle of that journey. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. Like Joseph, your suffering was never wasted. It was sculpting something powerful in silence. Fire is always part of the refining process. The crown doesn't rest on shallow soil. The weight of your calling demanded a deeper foundation. Have you ever considered that the rejection you faced wasn't to harm you, but to reroot you? That the solitude wasn't punishment, but preparation. That the delay wasn't a no, but a not yet. 1 Peter 5:10 says, "And after you have suffered a little while, the God of all grace will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast." You weren't being buried, you were being planted. Every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, every door that seemed closed, God was shaping something in you that no one could take away. It's easy to feel forgotten when you're hidden, but hidden seasons are sacred ones. That's where God speaks most intimately. Even Jesus withdrew to lonely places to pray. Could it be that your most silent moments were actually your most spiritually active? And now, the mark that has always been on your life is starting to show. It's no longer just internal, it's visible. People can sense something has shifted. You're not who you used to be. There's a light in your eyes, a strength in your voice, a presence that can't be explained. You didn't just survive what was meant to break you, you matured through it. You didn't just endure, you were transformed. The world often celebrates ease and perfection, but that's not your story. You carry purpose, not polish. You carry endurance, not ego. You weren't made for applause, you were anointed for impact. You're not here by chance. You're not rising because life finally got easier. You're rising because you've been equipped in the dark to shine in the light. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy." You've been standing in the unseen, and now your assignment is being revealed. You were called. You were set apart. You've been marked by heaven, and now that calling is demanding a response. To be chosen means your love cannot be ordinary. It cannot be conditional. It cannot be reactive. It must be Christ-like, radical in its reach, relentless in its pursuit, and sacrificial in its essence. Christ didn't love people because they were loyal to him. He loved them even when they were breaking his heart. Have you ever loved someone that deeply, so deeply it cost you something? Christ embraced the ungrateful, dined with traitors, and washed the feet of those he knew would abandon him. He did not wait for apologies. He did not demand admiration. Luke 23:34 records one of the most powerful moments of divine love. "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." These words weren't spoken after the pain, they were spoken during it. That is the standard for love when you're chosen. And if you are truly marked by God, you've lived this, not as a sermon, but as a lifestyle. You've loved people who left you without explanation. You've stood by those who later forgot your name. When your heart screamed for justice, you whispered grace instead. Was that weakness, or was it a deeper kind of strength? The kind that only those forged in God's presence can carry. Your love has defied logic. You extended compassion even when bitterness felt justified. Have you ever looked at your reflection and wondered why your heart still aches for people who hurt you? It's because your love has been trained by the cross, not the culture. The world tells you to cut people off and move on, but the spirit within you whispers, love them anyway. To love like Christ is to resist the hardening of the heart, even when betrayal has carved deep wounds into it. You chose forgiveness not because it was easy, but because it was necessary for your soul. That kind of love doesn't mean ignoring boundaries. It means refusing to let pain change your essence. Romans 12:21 reminds you, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Every time you loved through the hurt, you were winning a battle no one saw. There were nights when you were completely drained, yet you still gave, emotionally, spiritually, and sometimes even financially, to others who never even said thank you. You encouraged others through storms while standing soaked in your own. You extended mercy to people who never even acknowledged their wrong. Doesn't that sound like divine love in action? Many wouldn't understand why you stayed kind when cruelty seemed easier, but you weren't following the world's script. You were following Christ's example. Mother Teresa, a woman who spent her life caring for the forgotten and dying, once said, "I have found the paradox that if you love until it hurts, there can be no more hurt, only more love." Can you see how that same paradox has been playing out in your story? Even when you were empty, you poured. Even when your heart was heavy, you lifted others. That wasn't emotional weakness. It was sacred strength. You were modeling Christ, not with lofty words, but with bruised hands and a willing heart. Isaiah 53:3 describes Jesus as a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and yet he never withheld his love. That's exactly what you've been doing, loving from the depths, even when you yourself were bleeding. And still, many may have mistaken your obedience for naivety. They thought your softness was foolishness, but it takes far more courage to stay tender in a world that tries to harden you. Have you realized yet that your ability to love without limits is one of your greatest spiritual weapons? Every time you loved without needing anything in return, you planted seeds that heaven will multiply. Every act of compassion you thought went unnoticed has been recorded. Your tears haven't been wasted. Psalm 56:8 says, "You have kept count of my tossings, put my tears in your bottle." God saw every moment you chose to love instead of lash out. That love is forming the foundation of your legacy. You didn't just speak of Christ. You became a reflection of Him in the unseen, in the thankless, in the sacred silence where real love is tested. The truth few will ever admit is this: loving like Christ rarely feels like victory in the moment. It's not the kind of love that brings instant applause or guaranteed reward. More often than not, it brings heartbreak, fatigue, and the sting of being misunderstood. Christ-like love doesn't come neatly packaged with recognition. It comes with scars, emotional ones that no one sees, spiritual exhaustion that few understand, and a quiet grief that lingers when you've given your all and received nothing in return. And yet, despite all of this, you chose love. When you could have turned cold, you chose to stay open. When betrayal whispered that bitterness would protect you, you still chose to forgive. When the weight of disappointment threatened to harden your heart, you kept it soft. Why would anyone continue to love in a world that so often wounds those who care most deeply? Could it be that something deeper inside you knows without needing proof, that love is not only your calling but your very identity? What you carry is not something learned from books or passed down through human wisdom. This is sacred. You were created with a heart that reflects heaven. It's not just that you love, it's how you love. That kind of tenderness in a bruised world is nothing short of a miracle. Ephesians 5:2 reminds us, "And walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." And that's exactly what you've done. You've made yourself a vessel, not for easy affection, but for sacrificial love. Not everyone can carry that, but you have. Heaven sees every act that others overlook. God saw you when you extended grace to someone who didn't deserve it. He watched you hold back harsh words when your soul was bleeding for justice. He noted the quiet prayers you whispered for those who wronged you, and not once did it go unnoticed. Have you ever wondered why God kept sending you into situations that seemed so one-sided, where you poured out love and got very little back? It's because He trusted you with a kind of love that could endure pressure without folding. You've stood in dark places and refused to become darkness. You've faced people others walked away from and chose to stay. You didn't love them because they made it easy. You loved them because God made it clear. You knew, deep in your spirit, that love was your assignment. And even when it cost you, you showed up. Even when it left you empty, you still gave. Even when no one clapped, heaven stood still. Martin Luther King Jr., a man who led with love in the face of hate, once said, "I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear." He understood what you're living. Love may hurt, but hate destroys. And when God finds a soul who will keep choosing love through the fire, He calls that soul chosen. You could have let pain turn you bitter. You could have built walls so high that nothing, not even light, could break through. And yet, you allowed God to keep you tender. That's not weakness. That's strength most people will never comprehend. It's the same kind of strength that Jesus displayed when He hung on the cross and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Luke 23:34. That's not just something to admire. That's something you've mirrored. What separates you isn't your ability to speak boldly or stand strong. It's your willingness to love in places where love has no reason to exist, to forgive when it doesn't make sense, to give when you're empty, to carry the presence of Christ, not just in your words, but in your very posture. You serve like Him, you heal like Him, you love like Him. And here's something even deeper. God chose you to be a steward of this love. He didn't assign it randomly. He looked at your life, your wounds, your strength, your tears, and said, "Yes, this one can carry it." He trusted that you wouldn't let bitterness become your identity. He believed that your love would break generational curses, soften hardened hearts, and restore what others thought was lost. Have you realized just how much power lives in your decision to keep loving? You weren't chosen just to feel love. You were chosen to be love, to embody it, to bring it into places it has long been absent. That's why you should never downplay the depth of what you carry. Don't let the world tell you that your tenderness is weakness. The way you love is not small. It is not soft. It is not passive. It is divine. It is the kind of love that shifts atmospheres, reorients hearts, and restores souls. It carries the fragrance of Christ and the authority of heaven. And though the world may never fully grasp the strength it takes to love as you do, God knows. The angels know. Eternity knows. That is the love of the chosen. And you carry it with a grace that only the anointed ever will. You may not have held a sword in your hand, but you have lived the life of a warrior. Just like David, your battles didn't begin in front of crowds or under bright lights. They started in secret, in solitude, long before anyone knew your name or understood your fight. David wasn't simply a shepherd guarding sheep. He was a warrior in training, shaped by the quietness of the field and the loneliness of responsibility. Before he ever faced Goliath, he had already defeated lions and bears. He fought to protect what was entrusted to him, not for fame, but because he carried within him a heart that refused to let fear win. Can you see the pattern reflected in your own life? How many times have you fought private battles no one ever saw? How often did you cry out to God in the middle of the night, wrestling not with wild beasts, but with your own mind, battling anxiety, fear, regret, or the haunting voice that questioned your worth? These weren't small fights. These were the moments that shaped you. David's confrontation with Goliath wasn't the beginning of his bravery. It was the result of it. That public moment was only possible because of the countless private moments where he chose faith over fear. And you've done the same. You've stood firm when everything around you said retreat. You stepped forward not because you felt ready, but because something inside you refused to let darkness have the final word. 1 Samuel 17:45 captures the heart of David's battle cry. You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty. That's how you fought, standing not in your own strength, but in the authority of heaven. While others leaned on strategy, charm, or revenge, you leaned on worship, fasting, intercession, and relentless hope. You brought your wounds into prayer. You turned your tears into fuel. You fought with faith, even when the battlefield was your own bedroom. Your giants didn't wear armor. They weren't 9 feet tall or standing in front of armies. They showed up in different forms. Depression, betrayal, shame, rejection, trauma. These were your Goliaths. And while others may not have recognized the scale of your fight, heaven did. God saw the moments when you could have given up, but didn't. When giving in to bitterness or anger would have been easier, but you chose healing instead. There's a reason why others admire your strength but don't understand the depth of your scars, because your strength didn't come from victories alone. It came from survival. It came from choosing not to quit on days when your soul felt numb. Have you ever noticed how the enemy doesn't attack the weak? He goes after the ones who are destined to build something that threatens his kingdom. That's why your life has felt like a battlefield. Because your faith isn't just personal, it's generational. Nelson Mandela, a man who endured 27 years of imprisonment yet never lost his vision, once said, "I am not a saint unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." You too have kept pressing forward, not because you've been flawless, but because you've been faithful. You didn't let your scars stop you. You allowed God to turn them into symbols of survival. And even when the crowd was silent and your victories went unnoticed, God was watching. Psalm 18:39 declares, "You armed me with strength for battle. You humbled my adversaries before me." That's exactly what's been happening in your story. You didn't need worldly weapons. Your strength came from the Spirit of God dwelling inside you. And because of that, your victories have eternal weight. What sets you apart is not just that you fought, but how you fought. You refused to return evil for evil. You chose righteousness when revenge was an option. You forgave instead of retaliating. You showed restraint when you could have exploded. You fought not to be seen, not to prove anyone wrong, but to remain aligned with the God who whispered your name when no one else was looking. And when the enemy tried to convince you that you were losing, that nothing was changing, you kept showing up. You kept praying, kept believing, kept standing. That persistence, that quiet fire inside you, that refusal to bow to defeat, that is the mark of the chosen. Now, every spiritual scar you carry is evidence that you didn't just survive, you overcame. Not with pride, but with humility. Not with rage, but with resolve. And through every battle, you've become what David was, a reflection of God's strength wrapped in human vulnerability. You may not have realized it yet, but you've been trained like David in the wilderness so you can reign like David in the palace. Every hidden battle was preparation. Every silent fight was sacred. And when God decides it's time to reveal what He's built inside you, there will be no denying that you were born for this. People may glance at your life today and assume peace has always surrounded you. They admire your strength, your clarity, and your resilience, without realizing the storm you had to silence just to stand still. They see the light in your eyes, but have no idea how many nights you cried in the dark. They celebrate your growth, but they were not there for the silent wars, the private breakdowns, and the soul-deep questions you fought through just to wake up and keep going. What they see now is only the result. But what they missed was the process, and yet God never missed a moment. Heaven took note of every tear, every night you laid in bed feeling like you couldn't take another step, but still whispered a prayer. Every time you clung to hope when despair seemed more reasonable. Psalm 56:8 reminds you, You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book. Nothing has been wasted, not one heartbreak, not one unanswered cry. Like David, your victories may have gone unseen by the world, but they are etched into eternity. Do you know why? Because these weren't ordinary fights. They were divine preparation. God was shaping more than your circumstances. He was shaping your character. He was training your hands for spiritual war and refining your heart for the weight of leadership. Every battle you faced carved something deeper in you. With every blow you endured, you learned how to wield your spiritual weapons more wisely: prayer, fasting, praise, and perseverance. And when you fell, when you stumbled under the weight of it all, that wasn't failure. That was formation. You are not weak because you wept. Jesus himself wept. You are not broken because you were bruised. You are a warrior, not because you were unshaken, but because you kept rising when no one expected you to. You kept standing when everything in your life screamed collapse. And most of all, you kept believing that this pain had purpose. Can you feel it now? That deep inner knowing that every tear was planting something eternal. David was never chosen because he was flawless. He was called a man after God's own heart because he was faithful. He kept showing up in the field when everyone else was fighting on the front lines. He kept worshiping when he could have grown bitter. He kept seeking God even after he failed. That kind of persistence, unpolished, honest, relentless, is what defined his kingship, and it's what defines you. Think of Malala Yousafzai, the young Pakistani activist who was shot by extremists for standing up for girls' education. She said, "When the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful." Her courage wasn't born in applause, it was forged in adversity. Like David, like you, she didn't wait for the perfect conditions. She stepped forward anyway. You too have fought with holy resolve. Your battles weren't loud, but they were fierce. And through it all, you never let go of the hope that something greater waited on the other side of your pain. That's not just survival, that's legacy. Victory isn't a distant dream for you. It's woven into your spirit. It's been written into your story from the beginning. It's not just possible, it's promised. 1 Corinthians 15:57 says, "But thanks be to God. He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." That victory lives in you. Every disappointment strengthened your discernment. Every betrayal deepened your boundaries. Every delay taught you divine patience. Every closed door taught you where God wanted to open one. You've not just been refined, you've been aligned with heaven's timing. You didn't survive just to keep standing still. You were made to conquer, to overcome, to build something eternal with your scars, as proof that God really does redeem every broken place. That is the legacy of a warrior. That is what it means to fight like David. So when people wonder how you got here, let them know it wasn't ease, it wasn't luck, it was fire, it was faith, it was God. That's who you are. That's who you've always been. And now, it's time to walk boldly into everything God has prepared for you. One of the most painful but necessary realities of being chosen is this: the path to greatness is often a lonely one, not because you are unworthy of companionship, but because your calling sets you apart in ways that few will understand. The paradox is heartbreaking. You were created for connection, yet your purpose demands separation. You carry a divine assignment, yet the journey often feels like walking through a desert no one else dares to enter. Even Jesus, the Son of God, experienced this sacred loneliness. He had 12 disciples who walked with him, learned from him, and witnessed his miracles. But in his most vulnerable hour, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he found himself alone, weeping blood while his closest friends slept just steps away. Matthew 26:40 records his words, Could you not keep watch with me for 1 hour? That quiet question echoes through the hearts of all who walk the lonely path of purpose. Have you ever silently asked the same? David too knew this isolation well. Though he was anointed as king while still a young man, he spent years hiding in caves, hunted by Saul, abandoned by the safety and comfort he once knew. His crown was prophesied long before it was worn, and the waiting was filled with darkness, betrayal, and solitude. Psalm 142:4 recounts his cry, "Look and see, there is no one at my right hand. No one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life." And yet, even there, God was shaping him. In your own life, you've likely felt this same weight. Have there been moments when you were surrounded by people, yet still felt unseen? Times when your own family couldn't comprehend your vision, your friends couldn't relate to your calling, and your co-workers misunderstood your silence for weakness. That's not a flaw in your character. It's a mark of your distinction, because being chosen doesn't come with a cheering crowd. It often comes with quiet rejection, unspoken envy, or subtle dismissal. But what if this isolation was never meant to break you, but to build you? Could the very loneliness you tried to pray away have been God's tool for drawing you closer to Him? When the noise stopped and the people left, you were finally able to hear the still, small voice that had been whispering your name all along. In seasons of hiddenness, you were like a seed buried deep in soil, alone, covered, unseen, but never forgotten. And just like a seed must die to its former shape to become something greater, so too have you been shedding old identities, false attachments, and everything that can't go with you into your next season. The solitude wasn't punishment, it was preparation. John 15:2 says, "Every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes, so that it will be even more fruitful." What you called isolation, God called pruning. What felt like abandonment was actually alignment. Think of the life of Harriet Tubman, known as the Moses of her people. She led countless slaves to freedom through the Underground Railroad. Yet her mission was often a lonely one. She once said, "I freed 1,000 slaves. I could have freed 1,000 more if only they knew they were slaves." She carried a calling that few around her understood. Like you, she bore the weight of vision, solitude, and sacrifice. And yet, her isolation birthed legacy. In your silent seasons, God taught you things no crowd could teach. You learned to encourage yourself when no one was clapping. You discovered how to walk by faith when the path was dark. You became stronger, not because someone lifted you, but because God strengthened you from within. And while others were consumed by the chaos of the world, you were being trained in stillness. The world taught noise. God taught you silence. Can you see now how your loneliness was never wasted? How it was forming a resilience, a clarity, and a depth that applause could never produce. You didn't just survive that season, you were refined in it. And now you're beginning to rise. That is the lonely path of greatness. That is what sets the chosen apart. Not just what you carry, but how you were shaped, in quietness, in shadows, in sacred solitude. And though it may have felt like no one else was watching, heaven was. And God is about to reveal what He built in the silence. In the silence, when no one else could hear your prayers or see your tears, God was working. He wasn't just waiting for the storm to pass. He was in the storm, molding you, reshaping your character, and cutting away everything that couldn't follow you into your next level. Solitude didn't waste your time. It became the furnace of your formation. God stripped away the noise, the distractions, and the opinions that once clouded your path, not to leave you empty, but to make room for His strength. Have you noticed how it was in those hidden seasons that your spirit grew stronger? When you had no one else to lean on, you discovered what it really means to lean on God. While others were chasing validation, you were learning to walk with unseen confidence. Isaiah 30:15 whispers, In quietness and trust is your strength. That strength wasn't built in applause, it was forged in silence. Loneliness for the chosen isn't punishment, it's pressure. Pressure that builds spiritual muscle, shapes your identity, and forces you to look past your fears into the face of God. It's in that quiet, sacred space that you stop defining yourself by others' expectations and start aligning with who God says you are. In solitude, you began to discover your real name, beloved, anointed, called, set apart. While others filled their days with distraction, temporary affection, and surface-level comfort, you were being stretched for something far more eternal. You weren't being forgotten, you were being formed. The world might have looked at your isolation and assumed it was a season of loss, but heaven called it pruning. John 15:2 reminds us, every branch that bears fruit he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. The higher the calling, the deeper the cutting. And you were never being cut off. You were being cut back so you could grow stronger. Think of Mother Teresa, who spent years caring for the forgotten and the poor in silence, often feeling the absence of God's tangible presence. She once wrote, "I am told God loves me, and yet the reality of darkness and coldness and emptiness is so great that nothing touches my soul." Even so, she never stopped serving. She allowed the loneliness to deepen her dependence, not destroy her mission. Like you, she was shaped in the hidden places where only God sees. Your path has felt lonely because the weight of your calling requires depth. What you're being prepared for can't be rushed, and it can't be handed to someone unprepared. Every season of solitude has been heaven's way of sharpening your vision and strengthening your spine. Could it be that the silence wasn't abandonment, but alignment? That the stillness wasn't punishment, but preparation for movement? Each moment alone with God has added a new layer of power to your purpose. Every time you stayed in the secret place, instead of running back to comfort, you were choosing growth over distraction. Psalm 91:1 says, "He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty." That's where you were, hidden but held, alone but not abandoned, waiting but never forgotten. So don't despise the silence, embrace it. It's the quiet before the floodgates open. It's the root system growing strong before the tree bears fruit. It's the hush of heaven before the divine unveiling. The loneliness you've endured is the proof of your preparation. It shows that you were willing to walk without applause, to stay faithful when no one noticed, and to obey even when the cost was your comfort. You didn't compromise just to feel less alone. You didn't water down your purpose to keep company. You walked with God even when no one else understood the route. That takes strength. That takes trust. And now, that trust is bearing fruit. This loneliness is not your ending. It's your beginning. Soon, God will bring the right people, the right opportunities, and the right doors. Not to complete you, but to complement the version of you that was forged in fire. You won't need the crowd to validate the crown. You'll walk in it because it already belongs to you. The lonely path of greatness may have felt long. It may have hurt, but it was never empty. It was sacred. And now, as you step out from the silence, you'll begin to see the extraordinary life God was preparing for you all along. Every chosen one, no matter how powerful their calling or how deep their anointing, must walk through a season of silence. A time when everything seems paused, when heaven feels quiet and your prayers return with no reply. It's that sacred space where the fire of your vision dims, not because it's dying, but because it's being purified. These seasons don't come to discourage you. They come to dismantle everything that's not rooted in God. Though it may feel like abandonment, it's actually refinement. Though it may feel like stagnation, it's spiritual strategy. Could it be that the very silence you've been desperate to escape is the soil in which your next season is being planted? Silent seasons are not signs of God's absence. They are signs of God's precision. He is moving, even when you cannot see it. And in these moments, he is doing his most holy work, not around you, but within you. Look at those whom God used mightily. Joseph had a prophetic dream at just 17, but before the dream could be fulfilled, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold as a slave, falsely accused, and imprisoned. What looked like delay was actually development. Genesis 39:21 reminds us, "But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison." The silence didn't mean God had left him, it meant God was preparing him. Moses, born to deliver a nation, spent 40 hidden years in Midian tending sheep, far from Egypt's palace, far from Israel's cries. Why would God allow such a detour? Because leadership forged in solitude lasts longer than influence gained in haste. Could it be that your wilderness has been God's way of softening your pride and strengthening your spirit? Even Jesus, the very Son of God, lived 30 years in quiet obedience before stepping into 3 years of public ministry. For most of his life, he was hidden. No stage, no crowd, just faithfulness in silence. Luke 2:52 says, "And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and man." Are you beginning to see that your silent season has always been part of the plan? Purpose never bypasses the quiet. It is always forged in it. That's the part many people miss. They want the crown but avoid the cave. They desire the platform but resist the process. But you stayed. You kept seeking even when heaven seemed silent. You kept showing up even when the doors didn't open. That's not weakness. That's what perseverance looks like in the life of the chosen. Have you ever looked around and felt like everyone else was moving forward while you stood still? Like the world was running past you and you were locked in place by invisible hands. That kind of waiting can feel like punishment, but it's not. It's divine positioning. You cried out to God, asking why the promise felt delayed, why the dream seemed buried. But what if it was never buried to die, but to take root? In this quiet season, God has been doing a hidden work in you. He's been digging deep, uprooting insecurities, exposing toxic patterns, and stripping away false identities. The parts of you that couldn't handle your next level have been brought to the surface, not to shame you, but to free you. He's healed wounds you forgot were still open. He's been changing the way you think, reshaping the way you see yourself, and realigning your motives so that when the door opens, you walk through it in wholeness, not in haste. Because what good is promotion if your foundation can't hold it? What good is influence if your character collapses under pressure? God has been building you for longevity. He's been preparing you to last. That's why the silence has been so heavy, because the calling is weighty. The delay hasn't been denial, it's been design. Every moment of stillness has been God anchoring your roots so your fruit will endure. Think of someone like Tyler Perry, who spent years creating content and putting on plays with barely any audience. People mocked him, misunderstood him, and told him he'd never make it. But in the background, God was building his vision, and when the time came, it exploded. He once said, "While I was praying for success, God was preparing me for sustainability." That is what God has been doing in you. So don't curse the quiet. Don't resent the silence. It's holy ground. It's the sacred cocoon where caterpillars become butterflies, where warriors are trained in private before battles are fought in public. And when your moment comes, and it will, you won't crumble under the spotlight, because you'll know that the spotlight didn't make you. The silence did. The silence you've been walking through wasn't wasted space. It was sacred ground. While others may have overlooked you, thinking nothing was happening, something profound was taking place beneath the surface. God was growing you downward. He was stretching your roots in the hidden places, anchoring you deeper in truth, humility, and unwavering faith. Why? Because true elevation begins underground. It doesn't start in the spotlight. It starts in surrender. Have you ever wondered why trees with the strongest branches are not the ones that grow the fastest, but the ones whose roots run the deepest? That's because what you cannot see is what holds the most power. In Matthew 7:25, Jesus teaches about a house built on rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. That is what God has been doing in your life, building your foundation strong enough to outlast the storm and carry the weight of your destiny. In this quiet season, God has been whispering lessons you can't learn in the crowd. He's been teaching you how to stand still without striving, how to trust Him when nothing makes sense, and how to stay faithful with the little before you're entrusted with much. Luke 16:10 reminds us, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Your integrity and silence is proof that you're ready for responsibility in influence. You've been tested, not publicly, but internally. Your motives have been refined. Your identity has been peeled away from applause and rooted in divine truth. God wants you strong in the quiet so you won't lose yourself in the noise. He wants your identity anchored in Him so that when your name is called, the platform won't change your posture. Have you felt the urge to rush the process, to beg for acceleration, for recognition, for the door to swing open already? That impatience is normal, but it's not always holy, because sometimes the waiting is the miracle. What if the delay has been the very thing saving you from collapse? What if, right now, heaven is protecting your legacy by perfecting your foundation? Don't despise this silent season. Don't rush what God is doing in the dark. What feels like nothing is actually everything. This is not punishment, it's preparation. This is not failure, it's formation. And the silence, it's not a void, it's a womb. And in that womb, your destiny has been developing cell by cell, prayer by prayer, day by day. Even in stillness, God has never stopped moving. Just like a baby is formed in the hiddenness of the womb before it's revealed to the world, so too has your purpose been growing in the secret place. Psalm 139 verse 15 says, "My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. Your calling has not been forgotten. It's being fearfully and wonderfully formed." Think about someone like Viola Davis. Before becoming one of the most accomplished actors of her generation, she spent years in obscurity, facing rejection, typecasting, and silence. But in the background, her craft was maturing. Her voice was sharpening. And when the right moment came, she didn't rise by chance. She rose by preparation. Her silence didn't stop her. It shaped her. So if you're still in that quiet place, trust this. Something powerful is being born behind the curtain. Every morning you showed up. Every tear you turned into prayer. Every moment you chose faith over fear. It's all being recorded in eternity. Your breakthrough is not just coming, it's being built through your obedience. When the silence breaks, and it will, every chain, every limitation, every lie that tried to contain you will fall. You won't just walk into your moment. You'll be launched by everything that was formed in the hidden place. The silent season is not your final chapter. It's the page right before breakthrough. And when your moment comes, people may see the fruit, but heaven will know the root. They'll see the shine, but God will remember the shadows that shaped it. And you, chosen one, you will rise, not as someone who was lucky, but as someone who was forged in the fire of stillness and proven in the silence. The shift is here, not just a change in your surroundings, but a transformation in your spirit. This is the moment heaven has been preparing you for all along. You loved with the compassion of Christ, even when it tore at your soul. You fought with the resilience of David, facing giants in silence, battling battles no one knew about, and winning victories that only God witnessed. And now, now comes the rise. But this rise is not about status or applause. It's not about recognition, crowns, or crowds. The rise of a true king is always about service. You are not elevated to sit above others, but to lift them. You are not prepared to dominate, but to deliver. Have you noticed that God doesn't raise people just for their own benefit? He raises them to carry others. That's what sets your journey apart. Your elevation isn't a trophy, it's a torch. It's a sacred responsibility. There are souls tied to your obedience, chains that will break because you chose to heal, lives that will find direction because you refuse to quit. What if your breakthrough is the key to someone else's survival? You are not rising for yourself alone. You're rising for your family, your community, and the generations who will come after you. Romans 8:19 says, "For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed." Could it be that all of creation has been waiting for you to step into this very moment? Look at David. He wasn't handed the throne the day he was anointed. He was chosen in private, then chased through wilderness and war. He was mocked, misunderstood, and marginalized. But when God's time came, when the refining was complete, not even Saul's armies could hold back his destiny. And the same is true for you. Every delay in your story wasn't a denial. It was a divine detour to make sure you would rise right. Not reckless, but rooted. Not arrogant, but anointed. Your wilderness didn't break you, it shaped you. The fire didn't destroy you, it purified you. Isaiah 43:2 declares, "When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned. The flames will not consume you." And now you emerge not as a victim of suffering, but as a vessel of strength and purpose. Do you see how every season of obscurity was preparing you for visibility that wouldn't shake your identity? You're not the same person who started this journey. You're wiser, because wisdom only comes through walking the long way. You're stronger, because endurance doesn't grow in ease. You're humbler, because the silence taught you to depend on God, not applause. You've been anointed in hidden places and appointed for public purpose. And now your crown may not be made of gold. It might be peace that passes understanding. It might be clarity where confusion once reigned. It might be quiet influence that opens doors without needing to knock. It might be unshakable authority, not over people, but over the very storms that once tried to destroy you. That's what it means to rise like a king, not in ego, but in divine strength, not in noise, but in spiritual authority. True kings don't need to announce themselves. Their presence shifts the atmosphere. Their past doesn't disqualify them, it qualifies them. And their scars don't weaken them, they legitimize their anointing. Think of Nelson Mandela. After 27 years in prison, he walked free, not seeking revenge, but restoration. He didn't rise for power. He rose to heal a broken nation. His time in the dark prepared him to lead with vision. Like you, his crown was born of pain, patience, and purpose. So what now? Now you walk forward not with fear, but with focus. Not chasing opportunities, but creating them, because now you understand. The rise wasn't the reward, it was the responsibility, and you're ready. You didn't skip steps, you didn't fake your way here, you were refined in the fire. And when people see you rise, they'll see not just a survivor, but a steward of something sacred. Because this is the rise of a king, and you, chosen one, were always meant to wear the weight of it with grace. Make no mistake, you are rising. This isn't a hope, it's not a feeling, it's a divine fact. What God has spoken over your life is coming to pass, and no force in hell can cancel what heaven has sealed. This isn't hype or fantasy. Your elevation isn't built on trends, followers, or applause. It's rooted in obedience, in surrender, in the sacred quiet work of deep preparation. Isaiah 14:27 declares, "The Lord Almighty has purposed, and who can thwart him? His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back? Nothing can stop what God has ordained. Now is not the time to shrink, not the time to question what you've already survived, not the time to doubt the voice that led you through the valley and into the light. If God says the time is now, then it is. Walk boldly, not because you feel fearless, but because your faith is stronger than your fear. Lead with humility, love without condition, serve with joy. You weren't made to stand on the sidelines of your own calling. You were crafted for this very moment. And remember this, true kings in the kingdom don't rise to tower over others. They rise to lift others as they climb. You weren't raised up to isolate. You were raised to illuminate. The strength God gave you isn't just for you. It's to build, to bless, and to point everything back to the one who lifted you from the ashes. Matthew 23:11 reminds us, "The greatest among you shall be your servant." That's the kind of king you are becoming. This is not a spotlight moment. This is a legacy shift. This is not about titles or positions. It's about taking on a mantle, a sacred responsibility to carry light in dark places and hope where others have only known despair. The process you walked through wasn't random. The fire wasn't optional. It was necessary. And now, what was promised is unfolding, piece by piece, step by step, exactly as heaven intended. You didn't endure all that pain, all those sleepless nights, and all that spiritual warfare just to survive. You were chosen to reign. You were chosen to walk in authority, not arrogance, to carry peace that surpasses understanding, to command rooms not with noise, but with presence. And now, all of creation is watching as God reveals what he can do through a life fully surrendered. So rise, not with pride, but with purpose. Rise, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because you know who sent you. This is your time. This is your mantle. This is the rise of the King. Being chosen was never just about you. It was never solely about your healing, your breakthrough, your platform, or your victory. From the very beginning, God's plan has been multi-generational. It's always been about legacy, the eternal ripple of your life, reaching into places and people you may never meet, but were always destined to impact. Everything you've walked through, the love you've poured out, the heartbreak you've survived, the sacrifices no one saw, has been sowing seeds. And those seeds, they will become testimonies, movements, and miracles in the lives of others. Can you feel it now? That your life, even in its silence, has been prophetic? That your obedience wasn't just about your destiny, but about the awakening of someone else's? Chosen ones don't just survive storms, they transform through them. You didn't go through the fire just to say you made it out. You went through it so others could know they don't have to walk through alone. You took the hits, you endured the hidden battles, and in return, God gave you something eternal. Wisdom shaped by wounds, compassion born of suffering, and strength forged in surrender. This is what legacy looks like. Not fame, not fortune, but faithfulness. Hebrews 11 is filled with names of those who died in faith, never seeing the full promise, yet still trusting. Their names are etched in heaven not because of their visibility, but because of their vision. And now your name is being written alongside theirs. Legacy doesn't always shout. Often it whispers. It's found in the quiet decision to keep going. In the night you chose prayer over bitterness. In the moment you gave love when you had every right to withhold it. It's in the child who grows up strong because you taught them how to stand in truth. In the young woman who heard your story and decided to keep fighting. In the man who heard your testimony and realized God could use him too. Think of Christ. He left no earthly empire behind, no mansions, no monuments, and yet his legacy is unmatched. Why? Because he gave love that knew no limits. He lived with relentless sacrifice and unwavering obedience to the Father. Philippians 2:8-9 says, "He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him to the highest place. That is how legacy is built, through surrender, not status. David's legacy wasn't just his throne, it was his heart. It was the psalms he wrote in caves, the songs he sang in pain, the worship he birthed in brokenness, and it was through his line that the Messiah would come. Can you see it now? Legacy isn't what you leave in your bank account, it's what you leave in people. It's the Spirit of God echoing through your life long after you're gone. And now, chosen one, it's your turn. The baton is in your hand, not to run for applause, but to run with purpose. You've been entrusted with something sacred, the ability to shape lives, to shift atmospheres, to speak life into dry bones. You've become someone others look to, not because you have all the answers, but because you've walked through hell and kept your heart open. This is your legacy, to love when it's easier to shut down, to serve when no one's watching, to build not just platforms but people, to pray for those who persecuted you, to forgive and to bless, even after betrayal. This is not weakness. This is kingdom power. Real kings, real leaders, real legacy makers don't rise to be remembered. They rise to reflect the glory of the one who sent them. So, what kind of legacy will your life leave? What seeds are you planting in the Spirit right now that will grow into shade trees for generations to rest under? You may never see all the impact you're making, but heaven sees it. And when your story is told, it won't just be about what you overcame. It will be about who you empowered, because that's the legacy of the chosen. You were chosen not just to rise, but to reproduce faith, courage, and truth in others. You were chosen to shift bloodlines, to reroute destiny, to leave behind something eternal. And now, that legacy begins with you. Your life is more than a story. It is a message, a divine letter being read by those who are silently searching for hope. Your journey isn't just for your healing. It's a roadmap for someone else's survival. And your scars, they're sacred, not signs of defeat, but symbols of grace. They whisper to those behind you, you can survive this too. Because you didn't just walk through pain, you pioneered healing. The paths you carved through spiritual wildernesses are now becoming highways of hope for those coming after you. That is legacy, not being remembered by many, but being used by God to reach eternity. Not fame, but faithfulness. Not building monuments, but building people. You may never know the full reach of your obedience. You may never see all the fruit your faith has planted, but heaven sees it all. Every time you chose to forgive when bitterness felt easier, every moment you rose again when quitting sounded more reasonable, every act of love when rejection lingered in your heart, you were writing legacy in real time. 2 Corinthians 3:2 reminds us, you yourselves are our letter, written on our hearts, known and read by everyone. You are someone's reason to believe that God still works through the ordinary. Someone will find strength in your resilience, clarity in your walk, and hope in your scars. You've become a bridge for someone else's breakthrough. The same fire that tried to destroy you is now the flame lighting the way for others. So take a moment. Ask yourself, what will I leave behind? What kind of legacy is being written through the choices I make today? Let your life be marked by things that last, love that doesn't falter, truth that doesn't bend, humility that doesn't hide, strength that comes from God alone, and faith that moves mountains. Let your legacy echo the reality that grace is real, that healing is possible, that purpose is worth the pain. Your story is not ordinary because your surrender was not surface level. You went all in. You said yes when it cost you everything. And now your life shouts to the world that God still moves, that He still chooses the unexpected, that He still raises the broken to become beacons of light. Because being chosen isn't a title to wear, it's a torch to carry. And now, chosen one, it's in your hands. Carry it forward, not with fear, but with fire, because the legacy you're building will stretch further than you can see and touch more lives than you will ever know. As we conclude today's message, I want you to take a moment and reflect on the journey you've been on. You have loved like Christ, sacrificially, endlessly, and with a heart that seeks to heal and uplift. You fought like David, fearlessly standing firm against the giants in your life, trusting in God's power to deliver you. And now you are on the brink of rising like a king. This isn't just a metaphor, it's your divine truth. You are not destined to remain where you are. You were chosen for greatness, and your time to step into your full calling is now. Think about it. Your struggles were never in vain. They have shaped you, strengthened you, and made you more resilient than ever before. You've walked through fires that were meant to purify you, and now, like gold, you are emerging more refined, more powerful, and more prepared for the destiny God has set for you. So, as you stand at this pivotal moment, know that everything you've gone through has been part of God's perfect plan for your life. If this message has resonated with your spirit today, and you feel called to support this channel, we humbly invite you to make a donation through Super Thanks. Your generosity helps us continue to share these life-changing messages and reach more souls with the hope, love, and truth of Christ. But whether or not you choose to donate, we want to express our deepest gratitude to each of you for your continued support, prayers, and engagement. Your presence here makes a difference, and your faith helps us spread God's word to the farthest corners of the earth. Now, before you go, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear this powerful reminder today. Your likes, comments, and shares do more than you know. They help this community grow and spread the message of God's love and grace. Let us know in the comments how this message has touched your heart, and share with us your story of how you're rising, just as God intended for you. As you walk forward into the next chapter of your life, know this: God's hand is upon you, His favor surrounds you, and His plans for you are immeasurably good. May you be filled with peace, joy, and strength, knowing that you are God's chosen one. You are rising for such a time as this, and the world will see your light shine brightly. Stay strong, stay faithful, and never stop trusting in the incredible calling God has placed on your life. May God's blessings overflow in every area of your life. We are grateful for you, and we're excited to see the kings and queens you are becoming. God bless you.